When the internal controls of a neighborhood have reached a state of such total structural failure that 16 cents of every dollar in inventory is walking out the front door without a receipt, you aren't looking at corporate abandonment. You are witnessing the mandatory liquidation of a non-performing asset to save the rest of the enterprise from systemic insolvency.
Revealing some of the specific financial problems that prompted it to close a longtime location on Chicago's South Side. That announcement that the Walgreens at 86 and Cottage Grove will close on June 4th has prompted a major backlash among customers and Chatham residents.
I'm here today because we're closing the store on 86 and Cottage Grove. But I just want to make sure everyone understands, closing stores are not our goal. It's a last resort.
A trio of Walgreens executives, including the manager of the soon-to-be-closed store, explained the company's controversial decision at a community forum hosted by State Senator L.G. Sims.
But if this decision is not going to be reversed, what we want is to understand what is next for this community.
Earlier this week, Walgreens announced the closing of its store at 86 and Cottage Grove, which has served the Chatham community for more than 20 years, creating what many residents are calling a prescription desert and a continued disinvestment in the Black community. Today, the Walgreens executives revealed that store lost more than $1 million last year, partly due to declining prescription sales, but also a massive amount of store theft.
Theft at this store is 16%. That's 4 times above the company average.
The lock boxes help us protect merchandise in the stores. A lot of the times those lock boxes are getting destroyed, and that's a great cost to the company.
They say Walgreens was spending about $400,000 a year for security guards in the store.
We are documenting a moment in Chicago where the audit of reality has collided with a socialist accounting narrative, as a local lawmaker attempts to reclassify a $1 million annual loss as a first-degree corporate crime. It is a classic case of attempting to redact the facts to fit a political ledger. When the auditor of public safety, the city government, fails to maintain the security infrastructure of a district, the managing partners of a business like Walgreens have a fiduciary duty to write off the loss and reallocate the capital to a jurisdiction where the shrinkage rate doesn't resemble a total looting of the balance sheet. This isn't a prescription desert created by malice. It is a regulatory wasteland created by the inability to enforce the most basic internal controls of a civilized society. The rule of law. I am Camilo Motado, and this is Camilo's house. As a certified public accountant and forensic auditor, I approach every headline like a distressed entity review, where the management discussion, the political rhetoric, almost never reconciles with the physical assets and transactional data on the ground. In a standard financial audit, if you find that a branch location is spending $400,000 a year on security guards just to have the human capital, the employees attacked, and the fixed assets destroyed, you don't just verify the receipts, you issue an adverse opinion on the safety of the operating environment. Today, we are performing a Chicago Retail Solvency Audit on the Walgreens closure at 86th and Cottage Grove. We are analyzing the materiality of a 16% theft rate, the operational default of the local alderman's corporate crime theory, and the systemic risk that has turned the South Side into a non-performing asset for the American retailer. The operational trigger for this latest market volatility in Chatham is the announcement that Walgreens will liquidate its presence at 86th and Cottage Grove by June 4th. From an investigative standpoint, the audit trail provided by a trio of Walgreens executives during a recent town hall is absolutely harrowing. They disclosed that this specific store lost more than $1 million last year. In the world of forensic verification, $1 million loss in a single retail unit is a critical control weakness that signals an imminent shutdown. The materiality of the theft at this location is staggering. 16%. To put that in perspective for the shareholder stakeholders, that is 4 times the national company average. As a CPA, I track the cost of non-compliance. Walgreens was pouring $400,000 annually into security, a sunk cost that provided zero ROI because the security assets were being bypassed and the employees were being physically impaired. The executives described a hostile work environment where individuals were jumping across counters to liquidate liquor and cigarette inventory. This isn't just shoplifting. This is a hostile takeover of the pharmacy's stock on hand, when the day-to-day endurance of the staff is worn down by constant operational threats. The retention of human capital becomes impossible. You cannot audit the books if your auditors, the staff, are too afraid to walk into the building. The management response from the Chicago political class has been a masterclass in economic insolvency. An alderman, a person whose primary job function is to create laws, appeared before the community and certified that Walgreens' decision should be considered a first-degree corporate crime. In forensic terms, this is a total redaction of common sense. To claim that a business is criminally liable for contracting in the face of material loss is to impair the definition of the American economic system. It is a socialist hedge intended to distract the voters from the fact that the city management has defaulted on its primary fiduciary duty, protecting the property rights of the shareholders, the taxpayers, and business owners. If corporate abandonment were a crime, then the voter shareholders would have to indict every business that failed to reconcile its overhead with its revenue. This rhetorical deficit is being used to frame Walgreens as evil for not subsidizing the community's loss with its own capital reserves. But as an auditor of truth, I have to ask, who is the real criminal here? Is it the company that closes the ledger to protect its employees? Or is it the administration that allows a 16% theft rate to become the standard operating procedure? By criminalizing business decisions, the alderman is incentivizing the total liquidation of all retail assets in the South Side. No rational investor will allocate capital to a district where losing money is a prerequisite and exiting is a felony, the human capital. Impact of this closure is material, particularly for the senior stakeholders. We heard from residents who do not drive and are facing a technical default on their access to prescription assets. The transition to a prescription desert is a real liability for those who rely on fixed location services. However, the forensic solution is already being implemented through digital channels and logistics optimization. Walgreens is hedging the community's loss by providing free prescription delivery and encouraging the use of mail-in services. While inconvenient, this is a sound management move to reconcile the needs of the seniors with the place's reality of the security deficit. The community's counter-audit suggesting that Walgreens just stop selling liquor or redesign the store is a non-performing strategy. Walgreens pointed out that their lockboxes are already being destroyed. If a criminal entity is willing to impair the physical structure of a lockbox, removing the liquor will only result in the liquidation of the next available asset. You cannot redesign your way out of a 16% shrinkage rate. That is a systemic governance failure that can only be corrected by restoring internal controls at the city hall level. The systemic contagion of Walgreens closures in Chicago is widespread. In the recent past, the company has shuttered locations in Bronzeville, Little Village, South Chicago, and South Shore. This is a trend analysis of a retail market in technical recession. While the community protests the disinvestment, they are redacting the forensic fact that investment requires a probability of return. When you tax the business through high regulation and permit the theft through non-enforcement, you are deleting the ROI. Walgreens as a consolidated entity is struggling globally as digital market share and PBM pressure pharmacy benefit managers compress the margin. In a tight credit market, every operating unit must be self-sustaining. A store that loses $1 million annually is an impairment to the parent company's solvency. To force the store to stay open is to demand a dividend from a bankrupt account. The alderman's corporate crime narrative is a toxic asset that will only accelerate the divestment of other retail hubs. My forensic verdict on the 24th update of the divestment Walgreens Chicago saga is that the management at City Hall is in total fiduciary default. You cannot audit the morality of a business while redacting the receipts of the violence that forced the closure. The 16% theft rate is the forensic smoking gun. The $400,000 security surcharge is the material proof of a failed operating today environment. And the alderman's first-degree crime rhetoric is the institutional reporting failure that confirms the political insolvency of Chicago. Walgreens is not abandoning the community. It is writing down a lost investment. Until the internal controls of public safety are re-indexed to support commerce and frugality, the South Side will remain a distressed market that no amount of houting and hollering can rescue. The bat signal of socialist policy is only illuminating the exit signs for the last remaining private capital in the city. I want to hear from you. Is the corporate abandonment of a neighborhood a material act of malice, or is the 16% theft rate a justifiable grounds for liquidation? Should a lawmaker be allowed to criminalize business math while defaulting on public safety? Let me know in the comments. Your perspective is the only audit that matters when the solvency of your services and the integrity of your taxes are sitting on the negotiation table. I am Camilo Motado, and this is Camilo's House. Subscribe to stay informed on the numbers, the laws, and the truth behind the headlines. Stay safe.